And we're back. Sorry, let me make that a little bigger. And this time I'm going to talk about the JavaScript file where we're actually doing the validation. So in the index.html, remember we had this link to this jQuery validate.min.js file, which exists inside the JS folder. There's the JS folder, and it's inside there. We don't need to make any changes to it. We can just use it as is. And in fact, you can just borrow this folder or this file if you want to. You don't need to even download it yourself. Okay, so let's go back to the main.js. And the main.js could, in fact, be inside the JS folder. It doesn't really make any difference where it's located at this point, as long as your script tag is correct in the HTML. Okay, so in the main.js, you will see that the first real line is this document ready function. You should have seen that last week as well. So as soon as the HTML is ready to be used or ready to have some function built in it or used on it, which essentially means the same thing as once it's loaded. So once the HTML is loaded, then we're going to run the validation on. Do you remember that I said pay attention to the names? Because now we're going to use this ID of the form. So this ID email underscore form, we're going to validate it. So this $sign just means, and for both, anytime you see a $sign in jQuery, it's going to mean we're going to interact with the DOM. The DOM is the document object model, or that essentially means we're going to interact with the HTML. So the JavaScript is now going to interact with the HTML, saying, let's go out to the HTML and get the element that has ID of email underscore form and run this validate function on it, this validate plugin on it. And the validate plugin just has two simple pieces to it. One is a set of rules, and one is a set of messages. So inside this email form validate, which is inside the document ready function, we're going to have first a set of rules. And the rules, it's actually objects, which isn't important for you to know at this point. But if you go on to take JavaScript or an object-oriented language, maybe it will that would help you. So it's a set of rules in an object, and each one takes the name of one of the elements from the form that you just referred to and set some conditions to it, set some rules on it. So in this case, for example, the email one is required. So we're setting the required property to be true, and we want it to be an email. So we're going to set that to be true. So you can look at the validation plugin documentation and see all of the different ways that you can validate things. So you can validate them to be the same as something else. You can validate them to have a certain length. You can validate them to be, well, of course, required and an email type. There are a lot of validation pieces that you can do with it, but I'm just showing you this super simple example at the start. Okay, so we have rules, and all of your elements, or at least all of the elements on your form that require validation, will be listed here with their rules, or a rule set, I guess, if you want to call it that, on them. And the full name, we're only going to have it required as true. And then to go along with that, we have the rules, and then we have the messages. So for each rule above that is not met, the user is going to receive these error messages. So for email one, if required is not met, if that rule is not met, then we're going to give them the error, please enter your email address, and so on and so forth. So typically, if you're going to have really customized messages on each one, you're going to have a different error message for each rule.